Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. I'm Will Robinson Smith, reporter for Spaceflight Now. You're watching our live coverage of the Starlink 12-10 mission, our third orbital launch live stream of the day. So good to have you all with us here as we're kicking off our coverage of this particular Falcon 9 flight. This will be the second Falcon launch for SpaceX of the day, if all goes well, in the next 57 minutes and some change. This is also SpaceX's 50th Falcon 9 launch of the year so far. Want to thank the more than 1,700 of you who are joining with us live tonight. Certainly appreciate those of you who are stepping back in with us for your third launch coverage live stream of the day. If this is your second or perhaps your first, though, with us, we appreciate you stopping by. Hope you've had a good start to the work week, school week. Maybe this is your holiday. However you're ending your Monday, we're very grateful that you are ending it with us here at Spaceflight Now. SpaceX is getting ready to start fueling its Falcon 9 rocket. If all's continuing on track, that process will begin in about 20 minutes. I want to thank our moderators who are back with us once again for round 3. Callistia Lee, Rick Donner, Jeff Hansen. Appreciate all of you being here. Astro Joe, good to see you tonight. And if you do see any of the other mods cruise on into the broadcast in the live chat, be sure to give them a big old Spaceflight Now hello. As has been the case throughout the day, continues to be the case tonight. We are powered by a wonderful channel member community here on YouTube who make these live launch opportunities possible. So big thanks to folks like M. Teresa, CK, Sulfur for Lunch, Cumulus Granatus, My Honey, and many others. Channel membership comes with a number of perks, including discounts at our online shop, that is shop.spaceflightnow.com. Access to member-only videos here on YouTube, access to our members-only Discord server, and of course the ability to watch all of our live launch liftoff moments from here in Florida in 4K. Currently, SpaceX is trending toward a planned liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket coming up at 10:34 p.m. Eastern. That is 0234 UTC for our friends joining around the world. As we're getting things rolling tonight, want to thank Callistia Lee for gifting 10 Spaceflight Now memberships. Really appreciate that. To our 10 newest channel members, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. If you haven't already, be sure to thank Callistia in the live chat, and we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership beyond the month that you were just gifted. I also want to welcome in Bill in Lauderdale, joining us with channel membership at the pad leader level. Got me curious if that's Lauderdale in Alabama or elsewhere. And channel member My Honey marking 4 months with us as a channel member at the pad leader level. Appreciate you hanging on with us, My Honey. Last little bit of housekeeping. If you have a comment or question or just want to offer a little bit of support, like our moderator Jeff Hansen did, you can use the YouTube Super Chat feature. And not only will he be giving us some interesting things to talk about as we cruise on through the count, but you'll be supporting what we do here at Spaceflight Now, and that, my friends, is always greatly appreciated. To that end, I want to thank both Jeff Hansen for a $5 Super Chat, saying it's going to some tea for me, and boy howdy, I'll need a nice big cup of lemon tea with some honey in it after all this is said and done. And a big thank you as well to channel member moderator Callistia Lee for a $20 Super Chat, also saying this is for Will's Tea and Halls Fund. Very kind, very much appreciated, and will very much be put to good use, I assure you. 52 minutes, 52 seconds on the clock here. As mentioned, SpaceX preparing to launch a batch of Starlink V2 mini satellites into low Earth orbit today. And, of course, we are joined once again by our esteemed colleagues getting ready to track the Falcon 9 once it does take flight. After coming back from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station side of things, our Adam Bernstein is back with us over here at the Kennedy Space Center press site, getting ready to both track the rocket as well as do some still photography as well. Michael Caine has this launch off, as does John, but you can follow the fellas on their social handles. You can find Adam at ABurnNYC, Michael Caine at MD Caine Jr., John is at John Pisani Photo. If you haven't seen the photos that we shared from earlier, Adam and Michael got some great pictures of the Atlas V rocket as it took flight, supporting the launch of 27 Amazon Project Kuiper satellites, the first production batch of those satellites to head into low Earth orbit. ULA confirmed that those were successfully deployed, marking the start of Amazon's low Earth orbit constellation, designed with the aim of rivaling that of SpaceX and its Starlink. We'll also be joined with tracking assistance on this mission tonight, this Starlink flight, by our friend Pete Karstens with Max Q Productions. As we've spent quite a bit of time today talking about the Atlas V rocket and all of its ins and outs in support of the Kuiper mission, let's go ahead and take a second to talk about the Falcon 9 rocket. As it prepares to launch these 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites. Seeing a little bit of venting there from the strong back, which is a good indication that SpaceX is preparing to start the fueling process coming up here in just a little bit more than 10 minutes is when things get rolling. Speaking of that process, let's talk about that countdown timeline, the nominal series of events that we're looking for with a good Falcon 9 countdown. Things will start, generally speaking, at the T-minus 38-minute mark. That's when SpaceX conducts its go-no-go poll for the start of prop load. Once the go-ahead is given, fueling begins on the Falcon 9 rocket at T-minus 35 minutes, with the loading of liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9's first stage and a rocket-grade kerosene known as RP-1 on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages. 30 minutes out, a cryogenic helium begins loading on board the Falcon 9's first stage. Same is true on the second stage a few minutes afterwards. That helium is important because it's used to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. 23 minutes out, the second stage RP-1 tank is full. Then T-minus 20 minutes and 50 seconds is when the strong back retract sequence gets underway. That's when SpaceX is thermally conditioning the feed lines there at the pad. And we see a little bit more venting than we're seeing right now. It's known as the so-called big vent. It starts here at pad 39A at about T-minus 23 minutes, T-minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds. Net venting will continue on until about 30 seconds prior to second stage liquid oxygen load beginning, which starts at the 16-minute mark. T-minus 7 minutes, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway. That process involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, helping to protect them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. 6 minutes out, the first stage kerosene tank is full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, we'll see the strong back retract sequence get underway. They'll start with the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings opening up, and then the transporter erector with a strong back will pull back a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stay in that position until liftoff. At that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes out, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage about a minute thereafter, at which point the Falcon 9 rocket is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as we hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch 45 seconds before flight. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite as expected, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff coming up once again at 10:34 p.m. Eastern. That is 02:34 UTC. We're in just about T-minus 46 minutes and counting. Now coming up on 43 minutes ahead of the planned flight of this Falcon 9 rocket. As you can see by just looking at the first stage booster, this is a brand new Falcon first stage that is going to be supporting the launch of these 23 Starlink satellites. That being the case, two things to note about that. Number one, of course, there's no flight history to discuss with this one since it has none just yet. Number two, though, we don't actually know which booster this is. We have indications that suggest it is either B1091 or B1094, but despite our best efforts, we were not able to suss out which particular one it is. We also reached out to SpaceX to ask them to identify which booster this is for us, and we're still waiting to hear back. That being said, while we don't know which booster is supporting the launch of the Starlink 12-10 mission, we can tell you where this booster is going to be flying. So let's take a moment and talk a little trajectory, shall we? Falcon 9 rocket lifting off from Historic Launch Complex 39A. Going to be following the path of all of the boosters before it. Actually, we'll come back to trajectory in just a second. There we go. A little holdover from 3 hours ago. Anyway, the Falcon 9 rocket will fly in a southeasterly trajectory once it leaves the pad. The first stage booster, whichever one it is, will follow the red arc that you see there on your screen and target a touchdown on the SpaceX drone ship called a shortfall of gravitas. If successful, the booster landing will mark the 106th successful landing on this particular drone ship and the 439th booster landing to date. SpaceX will also endeavor to recover the payload fairings that are being used on this mission, turn them around for future flights. They will splash down to the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes, as illustrated in this photo you see here. Once down in the water, SpaceX will bring them aboard one of their recovery vessels and then bring them in through Port Canaveral, where they will be turned around for a future mission. Just a little under 40 minutes to go on this Falcon 9 rocket launch. SpaceX, broadly speaking, takes its readiness poll at the T-minus 38-minute mark. However, it does its poll electronically, so if it feels like they're in a good posture to do so, they can bump that up a little bit. just about a minute and a half away from the start of fueling on this Falcon 9 rocket, assuming that SpaceX is in a good position to do so, and they gave the go-ahead when they took that readiness poll. As we're awaiting signs of tanking for this vehicle, want to turn to our live chat for just a moment. Thank VL and NJL for a $10 super chat. Really appreciate that support tonight. SpaceX continues to expand the reach of its Starlink internet constellation. Taking a look at the most recently updated service map that is available from the company. The areas in the light blue shade are where Starlink service is currently available. The darker blue are where service is either set to activate or is coming soon in some long-term timeline of things. If you'll notice, certain regions and countries have those darker blue shaded splotches that are obviously not representative of an entire state or province, as the case may be, but rather just zones, certain pockets of those various countries where the Starlink service is not available for additional customer purchase, potentially because of the abundance of customers that exist in that particular pocket. And as you can see, we're just under the 35-minute mark, which means, well, fueling is underway, assuming SpaceX gave the go-ahead. It'll be a little tricky to determine that fueling has begun, though, because this is a brand new booster. The frost line will be much less defined than what we're used to with flight-proven vehicles. Where we're looking for, though, on the first stage is just beneath the X in SpaceX. Like if you bring your eyes beneath that point on the vehicle, but above, you see where that crossbeam sort of points down near the base of the first stage booster, like right in the middle of those two is where we normally start to see the frost line form as SpaceX begins loading super cold densified liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9's first stage. We should also see a little bit of vapor form in that area as well as the super cold LOX interacts with the considerably warmer and far more humid Florida air. So the frost line may not be discernible, but we should start to see a little bit of vapor around the area. And actually, if you look at the bottom of the frame, you can see some ground side vapor wisping a little bit. So that's certainly a good indication that we're in the process of fueling, and it does look like we're just starting to see a couple of wisps of vapor coming off of the booster itself. Give it another second just to be sure. And now you can see much more discernibly the vapor that is in the area of the booster, which means SpaceX is fueling its Falcon 9 rocket. Also meaning that they are committing to the T0 of 1034 with that liftoff, 0234 UTC. 29.5 minutes to go before the planned launch of this Falcon 9 rocket. At this point in the countdown, SpaceX is also loading a cryogenic helium into the pressure vessels on the Falcon 9's first stage. Same will be true on the second stage a few minutes from now as well. So far, all moving smoothly with this particular Falcon flight, coming just about 6 hours after the Vandenberg launch. Now just under 28 minutes to go. Let's talk a little bit about the payload that's on board this particular Falcon 9 rocket. 23 Starlink satellites in total. This marks SpaceX's 33rd launch of Starlink satellites so far. This will be the 32nd dedicated Starlink mission with exclusively Starlink satellites on board. Earlier this year, though, there was the Starlink 13-1 mission, which carried 2 Starshield satellites as a rideshare. SpaceX introduced the optimized version of Starlink last year, and we've started to see those be put to use a number of times this year. Unknown if SpaceX is using the optimized version of Starlink on this particular mission, but quite possibly. That being the case, the optimized versions are about just about 500 pounds lighter in comparison to the regular V2 mini versions, and 575 kilograms versus 800 kilograms, put another way. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. Tip to tip. They use argon Hall thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. They were built in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle, and they'll be deployed at about 180 miles or 291 kilometers in altitude at a 43-degree inclination. You're taking a look at the deployment of a batch of Starlink V2 mini satellites that were deployed from a different Falcon 9 mission, 13 of which feature direct-to-cell capabilities, as is the case today. Compared to the considerably much older now, at this point, version 1.5 Starlink satellites, the V2 minis have 4 times the capacity. They introduced E-band for backhaul. They feature an upgraded phase array antenna. They're about 2.6 times heavier in the original V2 mini configuration, and they used argon Hall thrusters, replacing the previously used krypton thrusters. Here's an artist rendering of what the V2 minis look like in their on-orbit configuration, connected with the laser mesh. Here's a rendering of what the direct-to-cell version of the Starlink satellites look like with the additional antenna. This rendering comes from SpaceX's partnership with U.S. telecommunications company T-Mobile, as shown during their Super Bowl commercial. And this particular rendering comes from their partnership with Japan-based company AU. And for good measure, here's a real photo of a Starlink satellite, one of the V2 minis, that was captured now more than a year ago by Black Sky and HEO. Finally, an image of one of the thrusters being tested. With just about 23 minutes to go and no booster history to talk about, let's go ahead and instead talk about the launch timeline for this particular Falcon flight. Once it leaves the pad, coming up here at 10:34 p.m. Eastern, 0234 UTC, the Falcon 9 will pass through max Q with a point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle about a minute and 11 seconds after liftoff. Following that, there will be a few events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, when the 9 Merlin engines on the booster will conclude their first burn. That'll be followed by stage separation and then the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine on the Falcon 9's second stage. The payload fairings that are currently encapsulating the Starlink satellites will be jettisoned just past the 3-minute mark. About 3 minutes after that, the first stage entry burn will begin when SpaceX will reignite 3 out of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the Falcon booster to begin to greatly slow the vehicle down, this burn lasting about 25 seconds in duration. And that'll set it up for the start of the landing burn, which will begin at about T plus 7 minutes and 46 seconds, using just the one center Merlin engine to cushion the landing of the booster, set to happen at about T plus 8 minutes and 15 seconds post liftoff. Following that, the second stage engine will cut off, and the upper stage of the Falcon 9 will enter into parking orbit, or coast phase, where it will cruise until about T plus 54 minutes and 5 seconds, when there will be a brief 1-second burn, helping to circularize the orbit. And then the Starlink satellites on board, set to be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 13 seconds. And beginning at about 10 seconds is the chill down of the feed lines there at the pad. We'll see this manifest as the so-called big vent coming up in about 20 seconds. And this vent will last until about 16 minutes and 30 seconds. And there you see the start of the big vent, right on schedule. As we see the big vent start to taper off here. There you go, the conclusion of that. Now less than 30 seconds prior to second stage liquid oxygen load. Taking a look at our live chat, I want to thank the now just a hair past 7,000 of you who are watching with us live. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button and sharing the stream. Lots more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as we cruise on through the remainder of the count. I also want to thank Kells for a $5 super chat. Good to see you this evening. Feel like it's been a minute. As you can tell by the wafting of the vapor away from the Falcon 9 rocket, there is a bit of a breeze tonight. Coming into this launch opportunity, the 45th Weather Squadron was tracking about a 75% chance for favorable weather at liftoff tonight. Just looking out for the possibility of violations from the cumulus cloud rule and the anvil cloud rules. Though given SpaceX stepping into fueling, they seem confident that when they hit the plan T0 at 10:34 p.m. Eastern, 0234 UTC, that things will be good and clear, and the path of the rocket won't have a risk of triggering rocket-generated lightning. Just about 14 minutes left on the clock now. So far, it's been a very smooth count for SpaceX with both of its rockets today, as well as United Launch Alliance's Atlas rockets. So far, a very good day for spaceflight. Just under 12 minutes to go on this Falcon flight. Let's go ahead and take a moment now to talk about SpaceX's workhorse vehicle, the Falcon 9 rocket. given, of course, that this is their 50th launch of the year so far. Falcon 9, a two-stage launch vehicle, standing 70 meters or 229 feet tall with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. The majority of that is made up by the Falcon 9 first stage booster. Once again, this particular first stage booster has no flight history. It's going for its first outing coming up in just about 11 minutes. At the base of the first stage, though, are those 9 Merlin engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that will be used to land the first stage on the drone ship, called a shortfall of gravitas. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure consisting of an aluminum honeycomb core, which is surrounded by carbon fiber. In the image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the vehicle's second stage. And at first stage at main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure clean separation. Also, the second stage engine nozzle is housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. As we move past the 10-minute mark, let us move up the rocket to the second stage of the Falcon 9, which is powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVac engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight to place the 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites into their intended orbit. As goes the first stage, so goes the second. Talking about propellant, that is. Burns liquid oxygen and RP-1. Following the deployment of the Starlink satellites, it will ignite for one more burn of that upper stage engine as a deorbit burn, driving it back into the atmosphere where it is intended to burn up and help eliminate the risk of creating any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the Falcon 9 stack are the payload fairings, which are currently encapsulating the 23 Starlink satellites. The fairings are a composite material, stand 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, and are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The two halves will be recovered a little bit further downrange from where the first stage lands on the drone ship, which is to the east of the Bahamas. SpaceX is working to certify its first stage boosters as well as its payload fairings for up to 40 missions apiece. And all boosters start with Flight 1. And in just about 8 minutes, we'll see this booster take its first foray into space and back. Now just past T-minus 7 minutes. Right now SpaceX is chilling the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the Falcon 9 first stage booster. And coming up in about 45 seconds is when the first stage kerosene tank should be full. As we're coming to the end of our countdown process here, I want to turn to our live chat and thank a few folks for their support today. Our thanks to Don Flea for a $10 super chat. Thank you, Don. And to Mike Echo as well for a $5 super chat. Appreciate you, Mike. Thanks for the support from the both of you tonight. Coming into the final 5 minutes of the count here. So we've got Diana T joining us from Melbourne, Florida. RC Loves Landing from Weirsdale, Florida. Got Clarabelle checking in from the Palm Coast. Let us know where you're watching tonight as we are just now getting pad level views of the Falcon 9 rocket.
Strong back lower has started.
And in these final about 4 minutes of the count, we are starting to get our mission audio from SpaceX. Strong back retract sequence is now getting underway. Momentarily, we'll see the clamp arms just beneath the payload fairings open up. Strong back will recline. Actually, from this vantage point, you can see those clamp arms are now open. Should be getting a view back from the crew access tower showing the recline. Or they'll show from this vantage point. That works too. Strong back pulls back a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket. Stays in that position until liftoff, at which point it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion. A little bit of housekeeping here. You can see the difference between our clock in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, what's coming in from the SpaceX feed. Reason being, our clock is in real time and SpaceX is coming in on a slight delay. So as long as we have our tracking camera views, we'll be making our callouts in real time. Less than 3 minutes to go. The first stage LOX tanks should be full.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Good call out there. We're now waiting a similar call regarding the second stage LOX tank just after the 2-minute mark. As we're waiting that call, I want to thank Wolverine Warlord for being a channel member with us for now 19 months at the launch director level. Still hoping to see a launch live. And yes, it has been quite a busy day as we're under the 2-minute mark for our third live launch of the day so far. Third and final. Seeing the ground gas
Stage
closeouts.
2 LOX load is complete.
Stage 2 LOX load, ground gas closeouts in real time. Falcon 9 now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant.
Gas launch closeouts.
Coming up to a minute ahead of flight here in real time. T-minus 1 minute and counting. We'll come back to the live chat on the other side of liftoff.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
With that call, we're just awaiting the SpaceX launch director to give their go for launch, coming up here in the next few seconds.
LD, go for launch.
And with that confirmation, we are now less than 24 seconds away from liftoff, coming up here from Historic Launch Complex 39A. 15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition. And liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on the Starlink 12-10 mission. The Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. Just a little more than a minute into flight on this Falcon 9 rocket as it cruises past some clouds from our perspective here at the press site. Vehicle passing through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure. About a minute 30 seconds into the mission so far, we're coming up on the point where the Merlin vacuum engine will begin to be thermally conditioned.
I'm back chill.
With that call, we're now coming up to a trio of events in fairly rapid succession. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, or MECO, at about T plus 2 minutes and 25 seconds. They'll be followed by stage separation and then the ignition of that Merlin vacuum engine. You see MECO. Stage separation. Second stage engine start.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
I'm back startup.
Good callouts, good visuals from the SpaceX onboard cameras. Fairing separation should be happening any second now. And there go the payload fairings in real time.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And those 23 Starlink satellites now exposed to the vacuum of space for the first time on this mission. Some good onboard cameras. Again, the fairing halves will float down to the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes, where they will be scooped up, refurbished, and turned around for future flights. Now 4 minutes into the mission. Coming up next, in now less than 2 minutes, will be the first stage entry burn. That's when SpaceX will reignite 3 out of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the booster to begin to slow the vehicle down. Looks like the first stage booster is approaching its apogee today. Appears to be topping out at about 115 kilometers in altitude. Right now the booster cruising at a speed of just shy of 7,000 kilometers per hour. Now making its descent towards the drone ship. Shortfall of gravitas, as we are coming up on the 5-minute mark into this mission in real time. Some good tracking views from our team tonight. It's been quite a long day for everybody, and we certainly appreciate all their hard work. Looking up through the interstage there at the top right-hand corner of your screen, as the Merlin vacuum engine continues a good burn. We are less than 30 seconds away from the start of the entry burn at the base of the booster. A little bit grainy there, hard to make out much definition. But those bursts that you're seeing are the cold gas thrusters, which help the booster maintain its attitude or positioning as it orients itself towards the drone ship. Entry burn is underway now in real time. And well done, team, getting that entry burn. This burn lasts about 25 seconds in total. Again, you're seeing 3 of those Merlin engines.
Stage 1 FTS has saved.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
And with the conclusion of that
Both stages maintain a nominal trajectory.
entry burn, we're now looking into the start of the landing burn, coming up in about 45
Stage
seconds.
2 FTS has saved.
That call for Stage 2 FTS being saved is the flight termination system on the upper stage, no longer needed at this stage in flight.
Stage 1 transonic.
Coming up on the start of the landing burn here. It's already underway in real time, but we should see it on the SpaceX feed in the next few seconds.
Stage 1 landing burn. Stage 2 is in terminal guidance. Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And for the first time, this first stage booster, whichever one it is, has successfully made its way back down to the drone ship.
And back shutdown.
Nominal orbit insertion.
And a good confirmation of a nominal orbit insertion after the shutdown of the Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage means that this booster, or this upper stage, is well on its way to delivering those 23 Starlink satellites into a good orbit. Coming up next will be the reignition of that Merlin vacuum engine for a brief 1-second burn at about T plus 54 minutes and 5 seconds. And then the Starlink satellites are said to be deployed at T plus 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 13 seconds. And before we go ahead and close things out, want to thank just a couple more folks in the live chat here. Big thanks to Lucia for a $5 super chat saying, y'all are awesome, and checking in from Polk County, Florida. Pierce Mama with a very generous $45 super chat. Thank you so much, Pierce Mama, for supporting us at that level. Who says, please wish my longtime friend and roommate Rudy a happy birthday. He's who got me into watching space launches. Rudy, wherever you are in the world, we hope you had a wonderful birthday today. And a thanks to Skunk PS4, one of our channel members, for a $10 super chat, who says, this is a childhood dream. Multiple launches like an airport all in one day. Also a super chat in honor of Sandy, my newest Yorkie. That is delightful. And with that delight, let's go ahead and... Oh, I see we've got one other from PSA 1000, another channel member with a $10 super chat. Thank you, PSA. Oh, there's actually a few more. The chat just wasn't loading. Monkey Tree Rob with a $10 super chat saying, watching another launch from Lake Fairview, Orlando. Thanks, Space fans, for making this page happen. Quite welcome. Thank you for the support. United Nations Space Command marking 20 months with us as a channel member at the mission specialist level. Checking in from Cape Coral, Florida. Hope you had some good views there. Mitchell Wilbur, another channel member with a very generous $20 super chat. Thank you, Mitchell. Really appreciate the support at that level. Who says, gotta say thanks, Callistia Lee, Jeff, Cumulus, and Will, and the rest of the crew. Thank you for the kind words. Mel Roberts Harold with a $5 super chat, who says, just can't say enough about the phenomenal tracking. We are so fortunate to watch. Hats off to the photographers and videographers. And yes, we do have a remarkable crew behind the cameras that make these broadcasts as beautiful to look at as they are. Norman Reitzel with a $5 super chat saying, sincere thanks for the telemetry. Quite welcome. And Beverly Knuckles with a $10 super chat. Thank you, Beverly. Good to see you tonight. Who says, thanks to the mods, invited guests, and Mr. Will for working all day. And I will extend the working all day to everyone who's not on the mic right now, because it is not a solo venture. Thank you for your support. And let's go ahead and start to close things out with a look at our mission stats as they currently stand. Today's launch, capping off a very busy day, was the launch of Falcon 9 booster. I don't know. We'll find out soon enough when the booster comes back in through Port Canaveral and we have a chance to look at the tail number up close. stay tuned, space fans. This was the 467th Falcon 9 launch to date, the 50th of the year so far. Because this was a new booster, the booster reflight number remains the same as from the Vandenberg launch earlier this evening. This was the 141st orbital launch within the last 365 days. This was SpaceX's 109th orbital flight from Pad 39A and the 203rd overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Taking a look at the bar chart, here's where we currently stand on the year so far. 50 launches as we're coming up to the tail end of the month of April here. Moving on to some recovery stats, this was the 106th successful booster landing on the drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas. That marked SpaceX's 350th drone ship landing and the 439th overall booster landing to date. Finally, with some industry stats, this was the 36th orbital flight from the Sunshine State this year, the 53rd from U.S. soil, the 58th from a U.S. rocket company, and the 87th around the globe. One orbital failure on the year so far, and here's where the pie chart currently stands. So congratulations to both SpaceX as well as United Launch Alliance as well as China for all having successful launches today. It has been a very busy day in orbital spaceflight, and as our guest Jonathan McDowell mentioned during our Kuiper 1 mission coverage, a marquee moment in the satellite communications game, especially in these mega constellations, with 4 distinct launches supporting those mega constellations coming from around the globe. With that, I want to thank our team before we go ahead and sign off. Bill Lardale with one last $10 super chat. Appreciate you, Bill. Want to thank our moderators in the live chat. Thanks to Clisty Lee, Jeff Hansen, Rick Donner, Astro Joe. Thank you all for being here with us in this final flight of the night. Our thanks to our photography team who has been hard at work throughout the course of the day today. Once again, you can find all these fine fellows on their handles there at X. Thanks as well to our friend Pete Carsons with Max Q Productions for being back with us one more time tonight, helping to support the launch of this Falcon 9 rocket. Our thanks as well to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young, who's been running the technical operations of a very complex and ever-moving day today. Most importantly, though, I want to thank you for wherever you have been watching from. Certainly appreciate it if this was your first launch or if this was your third launch with us today. Thank you for choosing Spaceflight Now. For all of us here at the team, I'm Will Robinson Smith. My voice is about to give out, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off. But before I do, of course, be good to yourselves, be good to others. We will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.